Hello everyone and welcome to another art journal page with Debs palette. I'm Deb Stevens and I'm going to show you my process video of using a lot of mixed media techniques in my journal. This is the Dylusions 8.5 by 8.5 journal that I'm using, the Ranger journal with some heavy duty mixed media cardstock. And here you'll see me using the Stamperia rice paper. This is from the Fortune collection, DFS A4 871. I'll put all the links to what I've used in the description of this video as well. I was really taken with the colours in this piece of rice paper and in the collection that goes with it as well. But as I go through this video, you'll see things that worked and things that didn't work. And I left some of it in there so that you can see that everyone struggles with their composition. Everyone struggles sometimes with what they're using and the products that they're using. My brain is exactly the same as everybody else's. So you'll see me having some uh-oh moments in this video, and then you'll see me having some aha moments in this video as we go through. So to start with, the easiest way, as I always say, to tear your rice paper is to use a wet brush, which is what you saw me do previously. And to go through and to remove some of the paper from, to tear it up basically into the pieces that I liked. Then I'm using some Ranger Multimedia Matte. It is one of my favourite products to use. You've probably heard me say that in my videos before, but I like that it's matte, and any time that you're putting rice paper down, it is always a good idea when you're using a fluid medium to adhere it, to make sure that you're starting from the middle and using your brush to get rid of any air bubbles, etc., as you're moving outwards with it. Now you'll see me use and blend a selection of Stamperia paint. The sponge that I'm using is a piece of Ranger cut and dry foam. It is one of my favourite foam applicators to use. There's something about the density of this foam that seems to make blending so much easier for me, but unfortunately I don't think Ranger make this product anymore. I'm also using the sponge dry and just going between the two colours that you can see me using there. One was Nougat and one is Powder Blush. And I like picking up bits and pieces of both of these shades of paint because it pulls out some of the colour from the existing rice paper, and it doesn't make it look like I've just used a paintbrush and slapped on a bit of paint to join the two areas of rice paper together. So this paint that we're putting on now is like a bridge between the two areas of rice paper. As I go through towards the middle of the page, I think to myself, I'd like to have something a little bit darker, perhaps a little bit more sandy colour. So here you see me introducing gold sand as well. And again, I'm using the same technique as before, same sponge. I haven't wet it. I haven't added any water to my page or my paint. I'm just going through. And I really like, now you see me adding a little bit of water just to thin it out, but I really like when the lightest colour comes into the middle, and because I've thinned that out a little bit as a wash on my sponge, I then go back over every other paint surface that I've done before, and it makes things a little bit more holistic again, I guess. It pulls it all together, so then you don't see the big differences between the Nougat and the blush. This kind of goes over the top and blends everything together. I use my fingers a lot when it comes to the edges as well. As long as the paint is wet still, I do use my fingers a lot. It's one of my favourite easy to grab tools because they're attached to me. So when you're finished, obviously I dry this off really well. You'll notice there's some new colours there, and again I tried something else in the corner and I didn't like it, so I wiped it off, but I really liked those colours of paint that I used because I was trying to pull through some of those corner diamond type shapes. The colours were in the top right hand corner of those shapes out into the page, but whatever it was that I did, I just didn't like. So while the medium was still wet, I wiped it off. So here you'll see me using a Dusty Attic stencil. It's called Postcard. It's DA3598, and I'm using it with some ground Espresso Distress Archival ink with a brush. Again, this helps with the layering process and also to pull out and go over from the rice paper onto the paint, and a little bit of, I guess, you're blending and you're disguising that really stark line that stops when the rice paper starts and the paint starts. After that, I'm going ahead and I'm using some AALL&Create stamps. This is again another one of my favorite stamps to use. It's called Globetrotting and it's stamp number 911. And I'm going ahead and I'm using that with some Lawn Fawn textured white embossing powder. What I tend to do when I'm doing this is I have a piece of paper, then that way I can tap off the excess once I've put it on. I've used this with my Versamark ink pad, as you can see. And then I put the excess back into the jar, but I don't usually heat set straight away. I'll look and see, okay, where else do I want to put some of this shape, and I'll go ahead and I'll keep stamping, and then I'll add some more embossing powder. And I'll do this on and off as we go, and you'll see me do that. So collecting the excess on a bit of paper and then just dispensing that back into the jar. If you're anything like me, really klutzy, I tend to spill things a lot. So I really have had to make notes to myself as I keep moving and working with embossing powders to not leave the jars undone on my table, because even while I was making this video, I had a couple of spills. So make sure that you always put your jar back on, your lid back on your jar, because, you know, spilling a product can be a little bit disheartening. So flicking off the excess here again, putting the excess back into my jar. And then coming in and making sure that that is heat set really well with my heat gun. Here you see me using some of my couture creations. It's a sanding block, and I'm just using my sanding block to get rid of the excess rice paper on the edges of my page. You can use whatever tools you've got. You can use a pair of scissors if you like. I just find that a sanding block is easier because it gives it nice and tight, keeps it to the curves and the edge of the page, and that way I get the result that I like. Next, I'm using some Monte Crackle paste. Now, please make sure when you start using your products that you actually have a look and see that that was me having a cursory look, because I actually wanted this crackle paste to be clear crackle paste, as in I wanted it to dry clear. A lot of products you can put on white, and then as they dry clear. So I was trying to double check, and then I got really impatient because I didn't have my glasses on and I didn't want to read the small writing that was on the jar, and I went, you know what, stuff it, let me just go ahead and use it. The only other thing to realise or remember when you're using this product is, or any crackle product really, the thicker you put it on, the better the cracks are that you're going to get. Now, I started off with my palette knife, as you notice, and then again I go through with my finger and add a little bit more in various areas. And then whatever I don't like, or things that I think are coming or encroaching too much to the middle, I used a wet baby wipe, and then I got rid of the bits that I didn't like. Once this dried, again, as you can see, it didn't dry clear, it dried white. So I moved on to the next range of products that I've been dying to have a play with. It is one of my new favourite products, old favourite products. I used to play with it a lot before, but like anything, you go through phases where you move on to a product and then you move away from it, and I think I've just moved back. So these are my Lindy's Magicals. They're the magical powders. These are the smaller containers that they come in. The ones that I'm using here are actually flats so far, so they're flat colour, they're not metallic, and you start by putting on the tiniest, I know it looks like I did a lot, but I use the tiniest bit of powder with my fan brush just to sprinkle it around the page. Then I sprayed it with some water. I wanted some of those colours that were in the rice paper already to kind of blend outwards and hopefully cover some of the stark whiteness of my crackle paste. So again, I could have used a lot more colour, but I started off, you know, with a gently approach where I go, okay, if I use a little bit and then I can add more and add more and add more. But it didn't really give me the coverage that I want. So I went through with this cobalt blue colour of theirs, which is just stunning. And really, at the end of the day, I know that I should have stopped after using this blue colour. But, you know, we all go through those stages where we just can't stop. We get into that. I want to play. I just want to use my products. I want to see what I've got. But you can see as I added more water and as it went around the page, it diluted that beautiful blue colour that I had previously, which is okay. I guess it works out in the end. But in hindsight, when I watched back with the video, I thought to myself, oh, I really should have stopped with that beautiful dark blue and not watered it down anymore and dried it off. But again, I do Deb where I can't handle lots of pretty colours and I have to introduce a brown. Now I think this is Bandolier brown, which is beautiful, and it has a metallic element to it too, so it's got like a goldish sheen to this one. But I wanted to bring out some of that embossing that I had done, but again you can see I added too much water, and I just wanted that brown to bring up some of that white embossing, so it gave you an extra layer. So I've gone in and I've you know, popped a little bit more of that powder on and sprayed a bit of water. Again, this is where I should have dried, but my fingers came into play again. Mixed some of that colour with what was there before. You can see we're getting a little bit of mud, and then I try to use my baby wipe and keep some of that away from some of the focal points of the rice paper, because at this point I felt like I was actually losing some of the rice paper, which is what I didn't want to do. But that is what happens when you start your layering process, and I just thought to myself, I have to stop being so hard on myself. It's done. I've done it now. And I didn't want to gesso over the whole lot because I was actually pleased with some of the things that I had done. So I just thought persevere, see what happens. At the end of the day, if I didn't like it, I could just glue those pages together and start again. But this is part of the journey, right? It's learning, it's making mistakes, seeing what works for you, what doesn't work for you, what you like, what you dislike, the products that you want to play with, the products that you don't want to play with. So yeah, look, I think at this point in time, I was just getting into the groove and thinking to myself, what next? Now you see those colours down the bottom left-hand side of the page on the rice paper. It's like those burgundies and those dark blues and turquoisey blues. I'm using the Dusty Attic Lattice stencil here, DA1500, and I started off with a brush and my Versamark ink pad, but then I'm so impatient, so I just went through with the actual ink pad through the stencil, and then started putting on a little bit of the Lumberjack Plaid Distress Embossing Glaze. So note for you guys, when you're doing this and you are swapping between colours of embossing powders, different colours, please heat set the first colour before you introduce the second colour. That way, when you're getting rid of the excess onto your piece of paper, you're not contaminating your colours. In saying that, you know, what I say and what I do are always two different things, because I was just in the mood to play, and you know, a small bit of contamination from one to the other really doesn't bother me. I know if it does you, then take my advice and heat set before you move on to the next colour. So I wanted to pull that out, but when I looked at this after I'd done it, I was like, oh, I don't like this again. Only because I think the colours were so potent compared to what was around it. And also, I guess, because it was on the white Crackle paste. So, you know, so what does Deb do? She goes ahead and she follows through with the same technique on the other side. And that's okay because, again, this is learning, right? You just go, will it work? Will it not work? So, again, Lumberjack Plaid, go ahead, remove the excess. And then pour that back into the jar. That's where I had a bit of a mishap. You should heat set the first colour and then go ahead and add the second colour. To that, here it is, I'm using Broken China as the blue. And so then you remove all the excess of that out of your page and pop that back into the jar. And then we're going to heat set what's on my page. As I look at it more and more, I just used the brush there because I think there was some stark corners and I didn't want, you know, it looked like the edge of the ink pad. So I just wanted to make sure that that wasn't there. I was thinking about it, and I think later on in the video you'll see that I feel here like I've lost a little bit of this Distress ink and stencil use that I had done before. So I've come back with my Distress Archival ink, and I'm just adding back some of that stenciling work. And as you can see, slowly the bridge from one side of the page to the other side of the page is being joined by all these layers, but I'm leaving the center alone as much as I can, because obviously that will be my focal point. Now this is one of the Artie Circles stamps. I think that's another AALL&Create stamp, and I'm using the same brown ground espresso, and I'm going ahead and I'm putting sections, stamping sections onto the edges of the page, again crossing over from the rice paper into the embossed, stamped and worked edges of the paint, leaving the center alone. And then I wanted to bring in some numbers, so I'm just using my VersaFine Clar. It's black, but then as soon as I stamped in black, I thought to myself, oh, you've just moved the focus yet again, because you've introduced a new color, nice and dark. So basically what I had to do then is go around the edges of the page, so to try and bring it back into being a little bit more uniform around the page. And always when you're using your inks, make sure that you dry really well before you move into your next stage. And here you can actually see that embossing powder. What I did with it is I used a little bit of that Nougat paint as a wash, and I went over the top of the embossing powder to push it back into the background a little bit more. So you can see there's a big difference between what was there before and what we've got now, and I was much happier with that. Here I'm getting out my die cuts, and these are the Fortune die cuts. Beautiful thick chipboard pieces, really nicely done. I've emptied the packet down onto my page, and I'm just going, what are the elements that I want to use here? So this is where I look around and I go, what's my composition going to be? Which pieces am I going to use? What do I like and what don't I like? The winged cat is just beautiful. And because I felt like I lost a lot of my detail of my rice paper on the right hand side, I was trying to look to see what else I can reintroduce to bring back. So this is the washi pad, the Fortune washi pad, and again I probably should have stuck the washi tape down onto a piece of white paper so that the background would have stood out a little bit more. At the moment you can see what I've just cut out really nicely because it's already backed onto a white piece of paper, but once I take it off the backing that it comes with and I go ahead and stick it down onto my journal page itself, it then re-blends back into that background because I haven't given it a nice stark background for it to work against. So again, I'm just going through and finding bits and pieces that I like from this washi pad and cutting it out, trimming it to, you know, the size that I want, doing a little bit of arranging around the page. Until I'm happy with the placement of my elements. This is actually a really gorgeous collection. Here you can see me cutting out a few of that purple amethysty looking gemstones because I wanted a little bit more of that purpley tone to this side of the page, because you can still see some of the tone from the paint and the magicals and the embossing powder across the page. So you can see those purple reds, and so I wanted to make sure that those were brought back in as well. Now with the magic of editing, you've just watched me edge all my die cut and washi tape pieces with Archival Ground Espresso, probably the fastest I've ever inked edges of anything in my life. But before I went ahead and stick things down, I think I wanted to put some spatters on my page, but before I did that, I'm using Stamperia Aqua color. This is an interesting technique that I learnt from Antonis, one of his workshops. This is a color that you spray on, and I've only put a tiny bit of water onto it really, and you start heat setting the liquid, but before all of it sets really hard, you then go ahead with a bit of paper towel or a baby wipe, whatever it is that you've got on hand, and you remove some of the excess. So the bits that have already dried on your page with your heat gun then look like water stains. So you can see in the middle, I really like that effect on my page, because I didn't want just, you know, to have that island in the middle of beige or sand. I wanted a little bit more to go with it. Now for my spatters, I'm using a little bit of my Dina Gloss Acrylic. They were sprays, but here I'm just using my paintbrush and spattering some of the white around to kind of give it a more galaxy effect. It's another fan brush. And then I'll also use a little bit of Stamperia black paint to put another couple of spatters in as well, just to make those black stamped images, you know, not so standing out by themselves, I guess. I just wanted to make sure that there was a little bit more black on the page to tie in with a couple of other things. As always, dry really well once you've done your spatters before you go ahead and you start gluing all your elements down. Now I'd already done the arranging like you saw before. It's time to glue my pieces in on my page. And I roughly remembered where I had put most things before. So, you know, feel free to fast forward this bit if you want to. It can get a bit boring just listening to me. So all I'm doing for the next couple of minutes is gluing down my elements. If you find that in your art journals they're getting quite fat, your art journals are getting quite fat, the chipboard is quite easy to separate the pieces. So you can actually grab half, you know, put your fingernail or a pokey tool or needle tool in between the layers and remove some of the layers on this these die cut chipboards. And you also see me using a little bit of my excess chipboard from other chipboard that I've got to mount and make sure that some of the pieces are evenly balanced, because obviously as I'm building them up one on top of the other, some parts would need additional support. So I'm using some of my excess chipboard from other projects that I've got to just bump up and provide some additional support. Then I'm onto my right hand page, and again going through and using some of my washi, putting that down first, working out what it is that I like, what it is that I don't like. The beauty of the washi, like anything else, is you can cut it, you can arrange it around your page. But again, I think I should have probably mounted it on white paper so I could retain some of the integrity of the designs, whereas I didn't do that here, and I just put it straight onto the page, which then made it blend into the background a little bit more because the washi is a little bit clear and it just picks up what's behind it. So, you know, things that I learnt for myself, and hopefully things that you take on board the next time you put together an art journal page for yourself, I guess, using some washi tape or washi pads. The beauty of this washi too is that you can remove, as long as it hasn't been stuck down for, you know, a little while, you can remove and reposition as you see fit, which makes it a lot easier. It's a really nice product to use actually. So again, you'll see me, I'm arranging, I'm gluing, I'm propping up bits and pieces with some excess chipboard just to make sure that there is enough support on the pieces that I'm using. I use my stamp blocks once I've glued things down, because there is a bit of texture underneath what I'm gluing. I want to make sure that the glue actually adheres really well. So, you know, I will use my stamp blocks to go on top as a bit of pressure while things are drying. And I guess the beauty of liquid glue, as you can see too, is that you have a little bit of working time. So if you know, you're not using something that's super quick drying, you can manipulate things and move things around if you're not quite happy with where you stuck it down the first time. Here I kind of play with that planet a little bit. I don't know if I actually picked something that was too big, you know, as an additional thing. But at the end of the day, I'm pretty sure by this stage I was just like, you know what? I pulled these pieces out. I'm just going to stick them in. A couple of stars. A little bit more washi to tuck underneath. Decided against it. Here we're coming to the end of the journey. There is a Stamperia stencil here, an Egypt stencil, but I only use the tiny bit of it to try and form a bridge between the two pages. And then I'm using the Tim Holtz Tall Text stamp set, and I'm using that, and I'm going to stamp it with the Versafine Clair Nocturne ink, the black ink that you see there. And again, because of the beauty of editing, you don't have to sit here and watch me, you know, stuff around with tiny little bits of stamp, but I start off, the quote that I'm using is actually an old Egyptian quote as well. There's so many of them, you just have to Google and have a look and see what it is that you like. So again, I ended up just doing it one at a time. It is fiddly because they are tiny. They are tall text, but they aren't that big. So making sure that they stick to the stamp block could be a little bit fiddly sometimes, especially if it's been a while since you've used your stamps. So the quote's coming together quite fast. You can see there, peace is the fruit of activity, not of sleep. Now, in some instances with this stamp set, it is a distressed stamp set. So, but because of the texture on my page, I felt like some of the detail on the text got lost. So I just grabbed my one of my thinner Posca pens, black Posca pens, and I went over the top of a few of the letters that I felt got lost. And you know what? I really don't mind that my letters are squiggly, that my lines aren't that straight. It's my art journal at the end of the day, and you know, even though I'm sharing it with you now, there's obviously a lot that I do and that I make that I don't often share with people. I'm doing a lot more of it now than I ever did before, but when I make, I don't make to make other people happy. I'm making to make me happy. So I'm hoping that you liked and enjoyed my video today, seeing some of my triumphs and some of my fails. And I hope that if you do like what I made today, that you would consider subscribing to my channel and also having a look at me on my other social media like Facebook and Instagram and TikTok as well. Thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.